everybody, to The Leftovers. We are officially on our third episode. This is a series brought to you by Flash Food, where we bring in some of the brightest minds in the world, shaking up future generation, future technology, impacting food. We ask them to join us from their gorgeous kitchens, where we get into some of the hard topics around, quote unquote, the leftover. As we know, the leftover can be something that is left behind in your career, something unmentionable that you want to talk about, and it's also what's sitting in your fridge. Today, we have Rachael Jackson, the founder of the publication Eater Toss. I met Rachael at a lovely conference where I completely fangirled and let her know that her website is honestly not only the first of its kind, but the true pioneer in interrogating and answering a lot of these questions around like the food in home. Is it good to eat? What happens when a vegetable does this? What happens when a fruit does that? And you essentially became the encyclopedia for the internet to answer any one of those. It's absolutely bananas to have you here. Just start us out. Let us know what you were doing before Eater Toss. What led you to this journey?
Sounds great, and thanks so much for having me. This is really fun. Before I started Eater Toss, I was working as a journalist. I started my career in newspapers, most recently, which is actually a long time ago at this point. I was a beat reporter at the Orlando Sentinel down in Florida, and nowadays, actually, I talk to scientists in Florida about fruit, so I feel like I'm maintaining that connection a little bit. But after that, I worked at National Geographic for a while. I was a research editor for the National Geographic channel. And actually, while I was there, I signed up for a farm share. And this farm share arrived, and there were some items in it that just left me very unsure. You know, one thing that I feel is sometimes a little confused is ugly fruit and vegetables versus things that are actually a little bit troubling. I was never concerned about a carrot that was bent in a funny way or a red pepper that was oddly lumpy. Those I think are cool and they have a lot of character. But what got my attention was, broccoli that had caterpillars in it. And an apple that had all these black smudges on it. And I expected there to be a place online where I could find pictures of these things and some guidance on whether they were okay or not. And I was surprised to find that there really wasn't. There were some things directed toward gardeners and some things that were very academic, but there wasn't something that was geared toward consumers.
Was it mostly just like tribal knowledge? Is that what you were seeing when you started looking? Was it all word of mouth?
No, it was more, is this happening in your garden? Like, are tomatoes all splitting? This could be what's going on. Try growing them differently next time. As opposed to, they're okay, they're not okay. Neither of those was really geared toward someone in their kitchen who just wanted to know if the thing was okay or not. There's also, some general food safety advice, but even that didn't come up all that often for me because I was searching specifically for apple with splotches on it. And so I really wanted something like this to exist, and I had the curiosity, and I had the skills to know how to find experts. So I was like, let me just try this and see what happens, and so I did. So I started calling up various scientists and saying, hey, can you tell me what's going on with this apple? Why does it look like this? And I just discovered this world of food science, post-harvest science, where the folks really specialize on what happens to fruits and vegetables after we pick them, microbiology, and I just loved it. Learning about how the food worked was so much fun. And it was always surprising. There was so much more going on with the food than I ever expected. And then I really appreciated being able to write up these scenarios in a way that didn't simply give people a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but rather was like, this is why this food looks this way, and this is why it's okay, why it's not okay, or just cut around it and it's fine. And for me, the explanation is a huge part of it, because then you know that the advice is not just something that somebody's saying because it's always worked for them.
So a lot of your work is really grounded in the science that's available. I'm sure like average people like me, I'm not reading journals, which maybe I should be. Is that sort of where you pull information? It's like expertise, research.
Yeah, often what I would find, especially in the beginning, now I'm a little more sophisticated in identifying what might be going on, and that gives me more of a running start. But particularly when I first started, I'd be searching, like Googling around based on my consumer impression of something. And I wouldn't get very far because what I was searching, like little brown dots on avocado, someone actually working and studying avocados was probably going to be calling vascular browning or chilling injury. So what I really needed, and what I've always loved about this work, is to find the person who actually studied avocados, who I could call and talk to, who could explain it to me, give me those terms, and then I could do some more in-depth research to help fill in the gaps around our conversation. It will start with a question. I'll do some general research. I'll find an expert. I'll do a little more research after talking to that expert, and then put the post together.
And what have been some of your like most viral hits in terms of research you've done?
Yeah, I've done a lot of avocado posts, and I understand why. I mean, it can go strange in so many different ways. But there's a particular avocado post you cut in half. Depending on how you cut it, you might see little brown dots or little brown lines. That's vascular browning. That one is far and away the most popular post.
And people are just wondering, what's the difference of these lines, and can and should I eat it?
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, it's avocados. Yeah. They are the most...
I mean, avocados are so delicate, they're so delicious, they're so expensive. There's so many reasons why you don't want to throw away a precious avocado, especially when it's, when it has that issue, it often is still going to be okay depending on the severity of the vascular browning. Often that will happen if an avocado is just kept too cold. That could be if it was too cold on its way to the store, which you would have no control over, or if you bought it and it wasn't ripe yet and you put it in the fridge. You want to take a close look at it too, because if you see the brown line starting to come from the top of the avocado, that's more likely to be something that maybe got in through the stem and might be through the avocado. So I'm going to be a little more careful with that situation than if it's just some brown lines or dots in the middle. And you always want to just try it first.
When we post this, we'll also publish the link. I guess just sort of pulling out of the journey that when you think about the problem at large, you've really focused on this like moment at home. What have you learned in this problem of waste at large? The problem of like how we all get from point A to point B, what broke down, where folks were just like, I'm just going to chuck it.
I think it's so many things. I think a lot of it is modern life, being in a hurry, food often being relatively inexpensive. Sometimes it's harder for us to see the food that we're actually wasting. What I hope to do with Theater Talks is to help slow that down a little bit and to say, hey, wait, what if you just looked it up? If you're looking at something and you're not sure, maybe there's something fun you can learn about that food, and maybe there's a way that it could still be okay. I also think there's a lot of kind of like cultural, I wouldn't say pressure, but maybe some norms that you have to go up against sometimes to not waste food. That can be really uncomfortable and it can be hard to see. I think that definitely has an impact as well.
What would be like a norm?
One place I really want to see a lot of food waste modeling done is large scale events. Because that's a place where I think like as someone hosting a party, it can be very uncomfortable to worry that you might not have enough food. And I think that is a perpetual worry, and I think people very quickly start to overbuy and get overambitious and to worry. In a household level, if we can control for that, that's wonderful. And I think people should, and it's totally doable. I hosted a kid's birthday party, and we did not have to take out the garbage afterward, or the compost. It was cool.
Oh, wow.
I was very excited. And a lot
Can
of
you do a post on that? I want your notes. This is a very timely one. Hosting a toddler birthday soon, and you're like, snacks.
Yeah, no, I was surprised that we had as little waste as we did, and I wrote a story for the Washington Post over the summer about reducing waste at kids' birthday parties.
Yeah.
We just had snacks, and honestly, the snacks were fine for all of us to have lunch. But we put out things that I knew we would be able to use if they were left over, and things that would be easy to save. And I also put out smaller quantities of things, so I did not put out everything. And then if needed, I refilled, and sometimes I needed to, and sometimes I didn't. So we put out cheese squares, crackers, graham crackers, bell pepper, carrots. The bell peppers and carrots I knew we could incorporate into a meal later if they were left over.
It's funny. You've totally hit on the reality that I think the original inventors of girl dinner are actually kids.
Right.
They would actually rather just eat stuff kind of piled together. They would actually rather always eat snacks. Actually, most people would rather always eat snacks. So events are one thing. Yeah. Is there anything else?
I would love to see also like larger scale events, really modeling this and really making it easy for people. So in ways like putting out to-go containers at the end of the meal, and having progressively smaller containers of food. So the event's not about to end and they put out, a giant pan of fish that obviously most of that is going to go to waste. I think in the public spaces where we interact with each other, if we can see these steps that we can also incorporate at home, it can have a lot of power. I think just valuing food that much more. Last year, I organized a cooking challenge through Food Waste Prevention Week, which if anybody's at all interested in food waste, you can sign up as a partner for Food Waste Prevention Week. It's a really great event that just does a lot of awareness spreading. And one thing we did last year was this cooking challenge where we invited people to submit anything, really anything they made that reduced food waste. There were very few parameters. And one of my favorite entrants was this woman who used stale marshmallows, peanut butter, and Rice Krispies. And she made like a dessert for Easter. Mm-hmm. And what I really loved about that is that she knew that the marshmallows were going to function perfectly fine. I could see a lot of people maybe not feeling right about that. Like, these marshmallows are hard. Like, I can't serve this to people for a holiday. But she knew it was going to work, and so she did it. So she made was actually a very elegant dessert out of an ingredient that was very inelegant. And I think if we're assigning more value to food, we can see that and see the marshmallows. You know what? They're fine. They're going to melt down just fine. They're going to make great Rice Krispie treats. I tasted a little bit. It still tasted fine. And valuing food like that, I think, can really help us reduce our food waste and just being more mindful of what's going into the compost or the garbage.
You have created a beautiful world of information, knowledge. Something that we had kind of talked about a little bit was this change in the way people are getting content. You also said, like, one of the things that's made this really hard is, like, the world we live in is so fast, it's so cheap. In this world of information where you've cultivated reliable source, like, what is the future of how this information gets out, start to look and feel like?
Yeah, that is kind of the great unknown. Particularly for me right now, the information landscape has changed a lot in a very short period of time. For a long time, until maybe just about a year ago, people were finding me left and right through Google. Because they had this question, they went to Google. And Eat or Toss came up with AI giving answers to questions now, and with Google reformatting and changing how it displays results. It's been more of a struggle to help people find this information, and I have seen misleading information and inaccurate information landing higher up in search results. I really want to help get this information to people, and if anybody out there wants to help do that, I really appreciate anybody sharing the site with people, letting them know it's there. One of the fun parts of it is a lot of it is based on images that readers have sent me. So not only is it a database where you can find an answer to your question and match the image of what you're seeing on your counter with an image that's got a scientific explanation attached to it and a quick answer, but you can also just send me something and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible with some guidance, and a lot of those emails end up becoming posts.
The algorithms are changing, searchability is changing, which means traceability, accuracy, all of these things, obviously super, super daunting. And then the other weird part of it is you've actually probably created a lot of the content that's getting modeled as well.
Right.
What has that felt like?
Not good, honestly.
Yeah.
I use a service that tracks when my photos are being used elsewhere, and theoretically I can go track those down. But it's actually very hard to use, and it's a lot of time and effort. It is very easy right now to take content. It's a lot easier to do that than to go after the people who have taken it, and it's a tricky landscape. People who are organizing search have a lot of things I know they're trying to navigate, and one of them is to not elevate content that is written only to be responsive to search terms and not to contain real information. But one consequence of that has been that forum-based websites like Reddit and Quora, which certainly can be great, but have been going higher in search results, and I've actually seen instances where people copied and pasted from Eat or Toss and put that information into a Quora or a Reddit answer, and then that sometimes will outrank Eat or Toss itself, and that I think is a problem, and it's really tricky to figure out how to address that.
I know that there's a ton of experts on this that are going to be like, I know actually how to get around this. One thing that also came to my mind, if I were to pick anyone that was training the AI to understand this information, I would also nominate you to be the one who's at least training it. So
yeah,
that's my other thought on the how do we control it, because there is the center of the center of truth, and you're very much the sort of forthright top journalist in this space as well.
Thank you.
But also, how do we make sure that folks like you are at the forefront of the point of view of the information that's getting shared? If someone is giving it the wrong insight. Like there is certain outcomes, and we had talked a little bit about like, do you eat the eyes of a potato or not? And there are certain things that like are not healthy. And so there's definitely a line that at least I'm thinking about when you think about how that information spreads.
Yeah, I appreciate your saying that. Yeah, because a lot of these situations are actually rather nuanced. Personally, I think the details are fascinating, and I'm glad to put them out there. But I do see a lot of summarized information. Speaking of potatoes, a potato, green on a potato, can be a problem. If it's very, very green, that could be a sign that there's, similar to the eyes, there's a toxin that potatoes produce that you don't want to eat a lot of. But it's nothing to be super alarmed about, but you don't want to eat a very green potato peel. In my searches, I saw an AI answer saying to be very careful of onions that had turned green, and it cited the explanation of potatoes turning green as being why, but they have nothing to do with each other. And that's just one of the ways that this information can be crossed and be wrong. And that was at the very top of the search result. And in both a green potato and a green onion, you have a situation where sunlight has triggered chlorophyll production, but the potato is the one that's going to have some toxin going alongside that, and an onion, it just happens to have a green patch on it. It's okay.
I'm glad I brought up potatoes, even though not knowing that there was the onion side of it, but it's a very powerful example of where misinformation simply starts. It's sort of like a leftover that's sitting there and we don't quite know if we're going to eat or toss it yet. Like you said, it remains to sort of be seen, but it's a questionable leftover right now, this whole shift that's happening. This has been amazing. I could honestly go on. I have so many questions. We've got we have a few minutes left. I always wrap the episode talking a little bit about your fridge, and I probably know you've got one of the tightest zero waste fridges out there, so that's going to be a funny question to ask you. But was there anything else that I didn't ask you today that you really want the listeners to know? Or if there's like any advice that you've got on an interesting vegetable or fruit you've encountered lately.
Gosh, anything else? I just encourage people to reach out to me if they have a question about something, ideally with an image. I was working on a post this morning that came straight from a reader question, and I'm really excited about it. Hopefully it's going to go up next month. And I do also do workshops, which are really fun. You put up an image, people will vote on if it's something that they would eat or not, and it always gets a lot of great discussions going, and I love doing it.
I love it. Well, in the spirit of the show, you're in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Is there a leftover sitting in your fridge right now? And as you think about it, are you, well, I think here it's eat or tossing it.
I do have, you're right, I do have like a pretty tight sense of what is in my fridge. I think doing what I do though, I can be a little ambitious about like small things that I could eventually find a use for, and that is one of my weaknesses. But I do right now have some red peppers that are starting to get a little soft, and that I absolutely need to make tonight, and that is my plan.
So your leftovers, which I figured would be, I'm gonna eat them because
yeah.
you know them through and through.
Yes.
I love it. Well, this was so great. I'm so thankful that you joined us. I am a massive fan of your work, and I'm really excited for other folks to hopefully discover it as well, and hopefully answer some of your provocations back to the audience around the work that you do.
Yeah. If anybody has any actionable advice on the current information landscape, I'm here for it. Please get in touch.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. This was really fun.